Hi, everybody. Okay, we'll just give people a chance to log in. So we normally start around 3 minutes past, something like that. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen on that one. Like always, there is the Q&A buttons up the top. So during the webinar, feel free to add like questions into there and or use the chat facility. And then what we'll do at the end of kind of the discussion webinar, we'll then come on to the Q&A at that point and answer as many as we can. If there is anything that we don't get round to doing, then we will obviously endeavour to come back to you ASAP with any further queries or questions. We'll just give it a couple more minutes. One more minute. Those who have just joined, we're just saying that as usual, there is the Q&A button up the top of your team screen. Feel free to add questions as you go, pinboard them in there, and then Ben and I will endeavour to kind of answer and feedback on those, and or use the chat facility as we're going through. And then at the end session, in the Q&A session, we'll ensure that we try and answer as many as possible in there. We normally give it to about 3 minutes past, so just a couple more seconds and then we'll make a start. Listen to me humming. I just realised I do that a lot, like hum to myself as I'm waiting for things. Okay, so it's 3 minutes past, so we'll make a start. I'll keep letting people in as they kind of join. But yeah, so obviously today we're going to be talking about conquering your inbox. So talking about email deliverability, which I know is such a hot topic always in every sector, not just recruitment, but probably more so in rec, because we're all desperate to kind of speak to as many people as possible. Lots of people do mass emailing as a way of BD and outreach, and you know, especially now that there's a real focus on the candidate experience as well, and really like sort of making sure that you are maximising that. This is going to become even more important over 2024 and beyond. So I'm really pleased to have Ben on the webinar today. Just for those who haven't seen any of the webinars before, I'm Katie. I'm a fractional marketing director specialising in the recruitment sector for around the last 10 years, but we've been working in marketing for over 25 years in everything from kind of on the ground marketing day to day, right through to directing TV commercials and things. So like a really varied experience in different sectors, but just specialising in marketing now. And I go in and work with recruitment companies to help plan and execute their marketing. And I'm very fortunate to be joined today by Ben Fielding from Quinset. I'm going to stop sharing now so that people can see you, Ben. Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah. Ben, did you want to give a bit of an intro as to yourself and what you do?
Sure. So again, Ben Fielding. I've been in the tech game for a really long time. Have to apologise. This might be one of the geekiest webinars you've ever done. I'm a proper email geek, back from email systems that no one's ever heard of, which I won't say. That will show my age. But so you know, basically from on-prem email as it was back in the day through to cloud platforms today, and yeah, I'm obsessed with email deliverability. Yeah, that's why I've been quite successful working with recruitment companies, because what I do and what they need matches absolutely perfectly. alongside being an email delivery geek or pro, which is probably a much better name for it. Thank you, Casey. I'm also a fractional CTO, and I work with tech companies and startups trying to help them scale up.
Nice. And exactly that. Ben and I have worked on a few projects together, and I've picked his brains several times about this subject. So perfect choice for coming on today. I think email. We did one previous webinar with Force 24. We had Nick on from Force 24, and we were talking about sort of email marketing deliverability, more from a perspective of kind of not so much the functional kind of IT side, but more around kind of like what works in people's inboxes, that kind of thing. Whereas today is definitely more kind of practical advice around like the mechanics behind it and how you can kind of get past that sort of spam filter or improve your deliverability. Okay, so I'm going to dive straight in. And in terms of kind of like email deliverability, and obviously it's something that you work in day to day, how would you kind of summarize where the market sits at the minute? What's the kind of situation that you're seeing from the people that you're working with?
So we'll go back a few years to kind of explain where we are today. So go back a decade or so, and not many people had heard of this thing called SPF, which is essentially a record on your domain that says, hey, I trust these sources to send emails from me. Fast forward a couple of years onto that, people started to get, hey, we really need an SPF record for me to trust emails that are coming from you. And everyone was like, fine, it's nice and easy. I send emails from 365, from Force 24, from MailerLite, from MailChimp, whatever it might be, Bullhorn. We'll update our SPF record. It's not, SPF is infallible, and over time, the use of something called DKIM, which is essentially like an encryption key, that started to become the norm as well. And everyone's saying, actually, we really need to have this in place. Again, standards that have been around for a really long time. Just mail platforms that have got inbound emails we're starting to say we're going to start trusting people that have got these in place more. Then along comes DMARC, which is a set of rules that you publish in your domain that says, hey world, if it fails these SPF DKIM checks, I'm going to be able to tell you what to do, whether or not I think you should reject those messages. Again, it was no one was enforcing it. No one was really getting particularly het up about people not having a DMARC record. And then along come Google very publicly, Microsoft not publicly, basically saying, look, you really need to have SPF, DKIM, and DMARC set up, even in it's very passive mode from DMARC. But we need to see these records, and this will help us differentiate between bad platforms and bad senders and good senders. So where we are today is everyone in recruitment has heard of SPF, DKIM, and DMARC now. Most people are getting SPF right. Most people are getting DKIM right. Not many people are getting DMARC right yet. And Google have very publicly said that we're on a journey with DMARC and some other standards as well, which I'll talk about. But basically, there's no timeline set yet, but I'm expecting in the next 12 to 24 months for Google to start to tighten the screws even more and go, you need to have an enforced DMARC record, which is I'll get into later on. Essentially, they've had enough. Microsoft, Google, Yahoo, AOL, the rest of them have had enough of inbound spam. And it's still like 80% of messages that they process on their servers is junk. It's rubbish. So they don't have endless amounts of compute space. The roadmap for Google growing their data centers is quite vast, but they don't want to be wasting that for nothing, especially when they give most of their services away for free. Well, seemingly free to us. Someone pays for it somewhere. So it's about getting ahead of the game. And I've been talking to recruiters about SPF, DKIM, and DMARC for years now. And those that I have worked with, we've got some great deliverability. Those that are kind of still catching up with it have started to see issues.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because it is, I know you've obviously been talking about it for years. From a marketing perspective, we're talking about like email deliverability, and I think the job of the marketeer becomes really challenging because the message from the people kind of giving direction is like, we just need to get these messages out. We just need to do this. We just need to do that. I think the Google thing has played a big part in helping kind of shape the marketer's role a little bit more to be able to go, actually, you know, here's a valid thing like that's really publicized and everybody sort of knew about, and a reason to then go, we need to be smarter about the messaging and how we're targeting and who we're targeting and what we're sending and making it kind of more specific. And that, so, you know, that's been a real turning point. And I've certainly seen with the companies that I'm working with that there is a bit more of an understanding now around that piece.
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges really has been around not just the quality of the systems you're using and the technical setup. And you mentioned Force 24, that they've got a great configuration that uses subdomains essentially, and then they manage all that cool DNS geeky stuff at the back end. It's not just about the tech stuff though. It's also, you look at the algorithms and the little kind of traps that Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, AOL use, like spam trap email addresses. We know if you're emailing this address, you've scraped that data from somewhere, right? This is a dead mailbox. No one's logged into it for years. We've appropriated that as a spam trap, essentially.
Yeah.
And then looking at how many users are reporting you as spam, going, I just don't want this email anymore, marking it as spam. And you know, the higher up that ranking goes, and this all plays part of an algorithm. Like everyone just deletes your email straight away rather than engaging with it. They don't click on it, don't reply to it, they don't put it in a folder, they just delete it, or they've created a rule to delete it. The algorithms pick up on all this stuff.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, have you had anybody who's kind of ended up in this Google jail yet? You know, we've all sort of talked about it, but I've not actually. You have. And what happened to? Did they just lose the facility to send emails completely?
So Google provide a really cool tool to help with this. It's a totally free tool called Google Postmaster. Just go to postmaster.google.com, click add a domain. You put a little TXT record on your DNS settings, and then you can start to get data back from Google. And you can see how many users are marking you as spam. You can see if you're passing or failing some of the technical checks. It doesn't show you volume, just shows you percentage. But what you can see from those statistics on the various graphs they give you, you can absolutely see the days where you've been blocked. Right? I mean, yes, you're getting the bounce backs as well, but you can see, okay, this isn't a bad list here. I'm in Google jail. Right, I've got a problem here. And you kind of need to back off sending some emails, try and figure out what's going wrong. But where most people have gone wrong is because they're not monitoring this stuff. Right? Recruiters love a dashboard, right? Calls made, placements made, revenue hit, targets. And even from inbound, outbound phone calls, right? You've got these technical tools there that can provide you these stats, but not many are actually monitoring their DMARC reports. A bunch of people have just set up DMARC to say, DMARC, none, send the reports to a mailbox in my 365 or Google Workspace. And here you go. I'm done, aren't I? No, because actually that data in there, you plug it into a DMARC monitoring platform like the one I've launched, Quinset Power Mail, and you start to get insights into what's going wrong with your mail. But generally, if you can get the technical stuff right and you've got reasonably clean lists and you're sending emails to an audience that actually wants them, there's a good chance you're going to stay out of that Google jail.
Yeah. So in terms of, and I know we spoke about this when we were talking about what we were going to discuss today, that, you know, I know that you are technical, but because you've been working in this like email deliverability, and some of the questions are a little bit more geared around sort of marketing and like just kind of what you see in trends that you've seen. So what, in your experience, what's the most kind of common reasons that people end up in the spam filter or the spam folder?
Well, I'm going to lump them up into just three general categories. One is technical, so all the DNS stuff we've been talking about, and we'll get into some of the acronyms I haven't mentioned yet that can really help. Secondly is your data, right? Because you're sending to lists of people that aren't relevant, or mailboxes don't exist anymore, whatever it be, just bad data or badly categorized data. So sending the wrong, so for example, sending emails that are supposed to be for clients to personal email addresses. They're going to wonder where the hell you got their email address from and probably mark you as spam. And then there's the content. So content ranges from engaging subject lines that people, you know, entice them to read, right? Marketing 101, right? Nice, compelling, you know, Ted Nicholas 27 most powerful words in copywriting, that kind of stuff helps, right? Bit of urgency. getting straight to the point within your email so people understand why they're receiving the email, why you sent it, why it's relevant to them. But then when we talk about content, we start to get into the way the email's been structured from hyperlinks and images in your email signature, or the graphical, if it's a very graphical HTML email like that, the quality of that technical part of the content. Then getting onto attachments as well. So one of the ones I see every now and again is people sending PDFs with hyperlinks within the PDF. A lot of corporate email filters just block that stuff, right? Or sending password protected files. Some filters don't like that. So yeah, technical, data, and content. And there's multiple layers within each.
Yeah. And we actually did a webinar around like tagging and data and like the importance of it, because I think it is something, not just recruiters, but every business sector that I've ever worked with, it's something that people kind of struggle to have that foresight on, of when you first start building that database, using the tags that you're going to use and then kind of sticking to them. I quite often go in and I'll find that, people have had free reign to add tags on customer records or on candidate records, and then you end up with a list of like 500 different kind of tags, and nobody understands how to use them, what they're going to be used for, and I think that's really key, is to kind of, like with anything in business, you need to plan as if you are a lot bigger than you are from the outset, to ensure that you've got these things in place as you move forward, or there's a protocol of how you kind of tag, or the methodology, and then it's stuck to, and locking those sort of things down can be like a big, which I do think the CRMs are getting smarter with, but it is something that previously companies have sort of allowed free reign, haven't they?
Yeah, and there's a process thing here, right? And it's you might say to your team, this is how we need to categorize data, but have you explained to them the value in categorizing that data? If we get this right up front, this is the value I can add to you as a recruiter of your potential income, because the data's better. So you're sending relevant content to the relevant people. And it's so much easier to get 10,000 records right first time than it is to go back and revisit them later. Right? It's just, I mean, what a job that's going to be. Can you go and recategorize 10,000 records in CRM? Thanks for that, boss.
I'm sure we've all been there, especially people that work in marketing. Here's 10,000. Can you manually retag them? Yeah. And I do think as well, like one of the problems that we face in the recruitment sector is that a lot of data is scraped, and a lot of data is ambiguously collected, let's say. And so, like you said, that you'll end up with a mix of like personal emails, business emails, depending on where that data's come from, what it's been kind of captured on, etc. And that can be a challenge. And I know that there are tools out there to help kind of clean up data. So you've got things like MailCheck, haven't you, that you can run through, and it will ping the IPs to kind of make sure that the data, the email address exists and things like that. And like that Google Postmaster will obviously then help you as well moving forward. I think that's a great. In terms of sender reputation and kind of creating this healthy, what do you think are kind of the standpoints of that? How can they create this positive sender reputation?
So it's, like I said earlier on around data, right? It's easier life's going to be easier if you get this right from the outset. So I think a lot of people might have been here setting up a business. You've got the cost of paying someone to kind of set up your 365 or whatever it's going to be, and then there's, well, do you know what, I can do it with a few YouTube videos. I can get this right for myself. But the pain that you'll feel later on from not setting it up right. If you can get it right from the outset, the SPF, the DKIM, the DMARC, and the other ones I'll get to, and start to build up a nice consistent outbound set of email kind of rate that's going out, that people are engaging with, the people do want. And I always kind of think of this as like a seesaw, right? So we've got bad pushing this end down and good pushing this end down. So if you can start off in a good place, you're going to keep that seesaw down here all the time. And it's when you start to see things tip and you start to go, oh, we're starting to get bounce backs, we're starting to get emails going to junk, something's not quite right here. You can monitor that and actually see what's going on and go, well, oh, hold on, no, let's pull it back quickly. The challenge I see is when people have been like this for 6 months and they haven't realised. I said, well, this is we've got to keep pouring on this bucket. I'm not going to say it's going to take 6 months to get you back to where you were, but all these algorithms have been being fed all this data about you being bad in the way you've done stuff, and we've got to balance that out. It's really rare I see people completely kill domains, but it happens. It does happen. And yeah, I've had to work with companies to rebrand with a new domain and start to warm up the domain and build up the trust they had, because they just completely destroyed, through not their own fault, but through mismanagement from particular individuals that have destroyed the reputation of the domain. They just look like spammers.
Yeah, and it is, hard to recover from something like that. Exactly that.
Yeah, not impossible, but it just takes time, and you can't wait, right? So recruiting and say, well, we'll get that back in 6 months. It's like I can't wait 6 months. I need messages delivering now. So what do we do?
From your perspective and just from your experience, because you must get put in this position all the time, like we do as marketers, that somebody's got a list, a scraped list, say, that they want to use. What would be your advice if they came to you and said, we want to email all of these people?
So what's the definition of a scraped list here, right? So there could be tools you've got plugged into LinkedIn where you're pulling people's email address out. You could be buying this data from one of the several, don't want to give any of them any biased airtime here, but any of the kind of like prospecting tools that are out there, you can gather data. And we all know in the recruitment industry, some are better at US data, some are better at UK data, some are better at making sure their lists are clean, some say they are, but they're not. You always run a risk. Okay, so what is it you need? So if as a recruiter, if you need to make 10 placements every single month, which means you might need 5 new clients, let's say. Most recruiters are quite niche nowadays. You know who your customers are. So are you going specifically for the customers, finding out the records for the few people that you need to engage, and then feed that into a campaign, a marketing and sales campaign for 5 new clients? Or are you, which is kind of like the sniper rifle approach. I've got my target, I'm going for them. And that's great because you'll spend time validating you've got the right details, you want the right phone number, you'll find a way to get in front of them, nice targeted Google ads maybe, and all this other crazy stuff you can do. Buying the billboard outside their office, that was one of my favorites I heard of a couple of years ago. Marketing to one company with one billboard on top of everything else. And then the other is I've got 50,000 records I've collated over the last few months, and that's like kind of like the Uzi approach, right? It's just spray and hope of data going out there. If that is your strategy, you still need to make sure you've got relatively clean data. I've seen a lot of recruiters using burner domains, just setting up other domains going, well, let's just hammer it until it dies. And if we get some value out of it, great. I mean, I'm not sure what that does for the business reputation, but for the original primary domain reputation, obviously that stays intact. But I've played around with this stuff myself. I've helped people with the tools all the time, but never really done any prospecting before. Never really had the need. Recruiters are great referrers. But I've played around with it in the last year to see some of the challenges you get, and even some of the best lists in the world, you're just hitting dead ends. You're absolutely hitting dead ends, and it will affect your domain's reputation in turn. The simplistic one is the algorithms don't trust you and you start to go down in the ranking with them, and the other one is a company just decides that emails from your entire domain they don't want them anymore, so they just put your whole domain on a block list on their platform. Then you can't. Let's say so Coca-Cola is a good example. People are trying to sell into Coca-Cola, and then all of a sudden they go, no one from your company is never allowed to talk to anyone from my company ever again. Ouch. Right. So if you've got big clients you're targeting for, you can do yourself a lot of damage quite quickly by sending the wrong data or crap to the wrong people.
And just one thing that I was just going to pick up then on was that you mentioned about having different domains, and this is something that we get asked quite often. Should people have separate domains for when they're starting to do these kind of email sending campaigns? What would be, from like an IT perspective, what would be your kind of recommendation when it comes to that?
So if you get it right, you shouldn't need to. Right. That's the simple thing here. I've been working with one particular recruiter on and off for about 6 years. Their domain, we got our hands on this domain super early when they switched from a .co.uk to a .com. We built up the volume, we built up the trust, and they can always have and continue to have high reputation with Google, high delivery rates. Everything lands. Yeah, they get the odd person marking them as spam, but what they do is they make sure they're cleaning their lists. And if
Yeah.
someone says, "Hey, look, can you just leave me alone?" They'll put those individuals of that company on a do not email list, block it so stuff can't go out to them at all,
Yeah.
so they don't continually bombard them. But they've managed their data well, right? Because they know that this is the lifeblood of their business. This is where they get their revenue from. So manage it incredibly well. Other people have taken an approach of, so subdomains is one people talk about. Well, can I have a email.mydomain.com? Yeah, nice and easy to do. That's how a lot of email marketing automation tools work anyway. They look like they're coming from you, but the reply addresses to a subdomain. That's how Force 24 works. And some people are more obvious about it, and they might have particular markets they deal in. So they might have sports.mydomain.com, or they might have tech.mydomain.com. The problem is, if the algorithms don't like the emails you're sending, they'll still look at that top level domain, not just the subdomain, so you can still affect your reputation. And then you get into the, well, can I have variations of my domain with a hyphen, without a hyphen, with an extra word, with the word group at the end, with a different what they call top level domain, .co.uk, .com, whatever, .ai, .io. The algorithms in the Gmail and Microsoft world, they're not stupid, right? They get this stuff, right? And they've been tuning, they're constantly battling. So they will be looking for domains that look like other domains. Now I've seen someone with a .co.uk domain get blocked and pushed down the rankings because someone owned the .com version in the US and was a massive spammer. I thought, well,
wow.
Yeah, maybe try and defend yourself by buying the .co.uk.com version of a domain. But yeah, using those separate domains can work. Some recruiters work with different brands. So rather than just having a different variation, they say, well, actually, I'm going to behave like a whole other recruitment company. So I'm going to have one over here and one over here. And it's a really good way of building up a domain reputation, just starting off small with a particular brand and growing it. So the lookalike domains can work. And tactically, it can be the right thing to do. But as I said, if you're getting it right from day one, or very early on at least, you shouldn't need to do it.
Yeah. I know this wasn't on our list of questions, but it's just coming to my mind because it's the sort of questions that I get asked all the time. So if, for instance, somebody's moved over to a new domain, is it worth them using like one of these warm box kind of tools to warm up the domains?
I get asked this a lot. I know there's a kind of outsourced operations provider into the rec industry, and they warm up every new starter's particular email address. They plug it into Lemwarm, I think it is, or Warm Up Inbox, wherever it might be. And for the 2 weeks before they start, they're just warming up the inbox. There's no harm in doing it. I've used them quite a few times myself when we've got a new domain going on. What you need to be mindful of is that there's three things to think of here. So one is if you plug a new domain into the world and you start sending emails from it straight away, what happens is they're like, no one's ever heard of you, 5,000 emails a day. That's like an abnormal behavior. So now we're, well, hold on, this is a bit weird. That's pretty aggressive. So that domain, let's say you had the domain for 5 years and then all of a sudden you start using it. So they would have one little trigger there. And then there's what they class as new domains. So when you look at all the email filtering and engines that sit behind all the corporate email filters out there that try and manage and filter out a bit more cleverly than 365 or Google does it by itself. It used to be that if a domain was under 6 weeks old, 12 weeks old, it would be classed as a new domain. And there's a specific tag that says anything that's a new domain, put a black mark against its name, basically. I'm commonly starting to see people categorize as domains under 6 or 9 months old as a new domain. So you can warm up these domains as much as you like, but if you use them too quickly, you can still fall short because they're new. right? They don't
Yeah.
exist, because who would go and buy a new domain and send 5,000 emails a day? Spammers, scammers,
I was about to
tricksters,
say
thieves,
recruiters.
right? But this is what the algorithms are trying to protect against: is phishing attacks and virus attacks and
Yeah.
misinformation and whatever else it might be. So it's just unfortunate that new businesses fall into that category. I always say to people who are thinking of setting up a new business, at the earliest opportunity, go and buy the domain.
I know. Yeah.
If you've got 4 ideas but you're not thinking of launching for a few months, just go and buy them anyway. Right,
Yeah.
and even better, plug them into something and start using them.
Yeah.
And that's where the warm up inbox and then warm tools are nice and helpful, because they start to give you a little bit of traction, a little bit of activity,
Yeah.
or warm them up manually. I've done this with companies. Everyone email friends, cousins, neighbors, mum, dad, customers, and just send them something, just encourage people to be replying, get some transactions going on email, start to build up that genuine activity.
Yeah. I think I know that's probably would have been one of the questions that people asked, so I'm glad that we covered that off, because I do think it is that just knowing what's best and where to start. And URLs are so accessible and so cheap now as well. Exactly that what you said. Like the minute you're thinking about it, I'm terrible. I constantly, I've got like a really old, outdated, like 123 reg account that I've had for probably like 20 years. But what I do is I'll just buy a URL when I'm thinking of stuff. So I've got like all of these ones that come up on like this is about to renew, and I think, I don't remember buying that. Like, but it is better to have it than not have it or not get access to it. So many people have had to go down, like the .ios and the different routes because they're just not available.
About .ios. Yeah. So there's an age-old setting in Microsoft email servers. It's been around since before 365. There's a tick box specifically that says mark .biz and .info emails as bad, essentially, in simple terms. .io is going the same way, right? Because it's been hammered by absolutely hammered, and there's lots of unreputable people that have been buying them up. And as soon as a new top level domain comes up, scammers and tricksters are out there trying to buy one that looks like another company straight away. So .io is just, it started off really, really well, and then it was getting used by a lot of people who didn't have email set up right. So a lot of the algorithms are starting just to push it down the trust tree, as one of my customers calls it. It's just further down. And I go, oh, that's the one I get asked a lot. What are the best top level domains to get? I said, .com and .co.uk. If you're a UK or a US based business, .com or .co.uk. They are the best ones. They've been around for the longest, highest amount of trust. They're harder to get. It's a more competitive marketplace for them. But if you can get it, absolutely.
Yeah. And you can always as well, like we've got the one which our webinars go on, our company's Your Marketing Needs. We've got that domain, but we've got recruiter marketing. So it doesn't always, whilst it's ideal that you have your name as in on the domain, it can also be specific to your niche or specific to the areas that you're working in or industry or like something around talent. Like there are other options available as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to come on to all of the different acronyms. And I feel like this is where you're going to geek out now, Ben. So in terms of all of the different protocols that we need to be aware of and implement, kind of tell us where do we start and what should we be doing?
So SPF is an absolute must, right? You absolutely have to have it. So this is essentially a list of places that are trusted to send emails as you. Your website, your email server, your marketing tools, any online platforms, anything that sends as you should be in this specific list. And then for the super geeks out there, you've got dash all or tilde all at the end. Tilde all is basically saying, I'm definitely sending from here, but I'm probably sending from somewhere else. So if it's not in here, just mark it as a soft fail. It's okay. If you have a dash all at the end, it's no, I'm definitely only sending from here. And if you get an email from somewhere else, mark it as a hard fail because it wasn't me. So most people should have confidence to have the dash all at the end if they're getting it right. So SPF has been around for a while. Common issues I see are people freestyle typing into it and misspelling, putting too many spaces in, or accidentally creating a separate SPF record. Right? All this stuff just fails. It's very particular DNS. So I put my change control hat on, right? Check your work twice, get someone else to check your homework, make the change and test it. Then there's DKIM. So this is an email encryption. So you essentially put a record on your domain, and there's a record on the back end of whatever system is sending. So you'll have a DKIM key for 365. You'll have one for MailerLite. You have one for Bullhorn. You have one for your website. You have one for RS in time, which they only just launched recently, but is working really, really well. And that is basically like a handshake between what is this message the same message that was sent? No, and there's a kind of three-way kind of conversation that happens, and you get a big tick in the box. Yes, it's past DKIM. Then you've got DMARC. So DMARC sounds really complicated, but it's actually really simple. So this is you publishing a set of rules to the world that says, hey guys, a couple of things. If you get an email from me, right? So the receiving email server will look back at your domain and go, have you got DMARC record? Do you need to tell me anything? It says, cool. Here's 3 things I'm going to tell you. First off, if it fails SPF or DKIM checks, I'm going to tell you to do nothing with the none record in it. I'm going to tell you to mark it as quarantine or super junk, as one of my customers calls it, with the word quarantine, or I'm going to tell you to reject the message. Don't even accept it, and that has the word reject in it. So none is a passive record. Quarantine and reject are active records. And then what it says is, well, I can say, well, thanks for checking in with me. Yeah, I've told you what to do with emails that have failed SPF or DKIM. In my DMARC record, it also says at the end of every day, if you've had an email from me, would you mind sending me back a report of how many messages you had and whether or not they passed SPF or DKIM and where they came from? And the receiving email server goes, yeah, no problems, and sends this XML file via email to email addresses that you specify in your DMARC record. So it's a very powerful little tool. And as I said, a lot of recruiters have set up a DMARC record that says, and send those emails into a mailbox in my 365 that I'm never going to look at. The smart cookies, plug it into a DMARC monitoring tool. So mine's Quinset PowerMail. There's other ones out there as well. DMARC is another really good one. And basically it takes all these XML files and takes all this data and presents it to you in a graphical interactive format. So you can actually start to see, okay, well, Microsoft reported that it had 750 emails from me yesterday, 748 past DKIM and 750 past SPF. I was also saying it's had 200 emails from Brevo from me. Are we sending from Brevo? I didn't realize we were sending from Brevo. Hey guys, who set Brevo up? And someone goes, me, sorry, did not set up properly. No, you didn't. Right. So you've got this data actually telling you what's going on. So DMARC's incredibly powerful. DMARC monitoring reporting is where the real power comes from it. Then we get on to BIMI or BIMI. And this comes up probably only once a week. The conversation comes up with a client. So if anyone's got a phone that they've got the Gmail app on their phone and you open up your Gmail and you flick through and you see all of a sudden you see in all the list of emails, you see a company's logo, like Amazon is a fine one. You see their logo. How did they get their logo in those list of emails? We've done that through BIMI. So what BIMI is, it's a maturing standard, we'll call it, which is basically, well, give me a file, give me a graphic, and we'll host that, and then we'll tell the world that you've got a BIMI logo and you can come and look it up. And there's 2 ways of doing it. One is the free way of just setting it up, and a few email receiving servers support it, not many. And then there's the certificated evidenced, and you might have seen in Gmail as well, you get the little blue tick next to it when you get through. That's verified through something called a VMC certificate. So you pay, I think the cheapest one on the market, there's only 2 companies that do it, $1,300 a year for you to have a verified mark certificate, a VMC. And that just evidences to the world that you own the brand, you own the logo. It's basically like a trademark of that specific logo you've designed for that. And yes, you have to renew that every single year. But that will give you that verified tick. You cannot enable BIMI unless you've got DMARC enforced. So either quarantine, preferably reject. So it's not for everyone. It's a big chunk of change. The bigger brands will do it. So you can get Microsoft don't haven't conformed to the standard yet, so it doesn't work when you're sending it to Microsoft email accounts. And there's a whether or not it's going to survive as a standard or not. I mean, Google's really behind it, 100%. And if Google wants something to happen, it generally happens eventually. But I think it's going to take us another couple of years before it becomes the norm and more widely accepted. And then there's a couple of real like minute geeky things that I talk to people about when I'm looking at the setup of their domain. They don't have to worry about it. I just set stuff up, which is two things called MTA, SDS, and TLS reporting. It's a belt and braces, last 5% of quality on your domain. And it's essentially about protecting you from an inbound perspective and evidencing you're a very mature sender. Again, my platform manages all this stuff. I get it all set up.
Yeah. So
I think that's all the acronyms.
I think we'll probably find some more. So I'm just looking at that list. So I'm thinking about, like, if I was a recruiter and I'm like, right, okay, I've listened to that list. Like, what do I do? How do I start? So as I understand, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC are all to do with your DNS.
Yeah.
Is that right? So
yeah.
that would. I'm not suggesting people go out and do this themselves manually, but that is set up through, like, say, your hosting provider. So your IT company or IT support people would be able to kind of give you some guidance on, like, go in and set up, like, the DNS records as needed. And one of the things that I saw happening, or that we were getting kind of queries to, was when people were using things, say, like MailChimp. They brought in the thing in April to say that you had to have this DMARC record set up, and they gave you, like, what it should be to go in and set it up. But obviously, if you had that from every provider, do you put all of those in, or is that down to that?
This is where it gets
all kind of thing.
Yeah. And this is where, from skills and experience out in the tech world and marketing world, this is where you start to drop off a cliff in people's level of understanding.
Yeah.
So yeah, in a DMARC report, you can send those reports to essentially, I've never found a limit, but I've only ever sent it to 3 different destinations. I had the marketing company had the DMARC reporting. We had DMARC reporting set up from a general deliverability perspective. And then a particular marketing platform also wanted the DMARC reports. So we set up 3 email addresses for it to go to in the DMARC report. 99% of the time when I see someone's tried to set this up, they've always got it wrong. Which is why, again, my platform, I sound like I'm really pushing my platform, but basically I've got like a graphical interface way of building your DMARC. So you can easily go and add in multiple email addresses and not have to worry about the spelling and do I put the comma there and how do I do this and how do I do that. A lot of marketing companies also will want DMARC reporting on the subdomain. So this is where in DMARC you can set a set of rules for the primary domain and then a set of rules for the subdomain. And then the subdomain can have its own DMARC record. So it starts to get into kind of layers of complexity that, again, a large percentage of the audience is going to go, can you just make it work? Because we're getting quite deep and dark into stuff then.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had this with SPF back
I was
in the day.
Say, and SPF was similar, wasn't it?
They'd say, you need to publish this SPF record. So Google would give you, well, Google didn't tell you to set up SPF. Microsoft would give you one. Bullhorn would give you one. Sendinblue, Brevo, whatever it is now, MailChimp, whoever will give you one as well. And back in the day, the instructions were pretty rubbish. They've got a lot better now. They generally say, you probably already have one. I want you to put this in. If you already have one, you might change it to something like this, but you still get people just copying and pasting.
Yeah.
Getting that stuff wrong will affect the reputation of your domain. And the longer it's wrong for, back to the seesaw, the longer you've got problems.
Yeah. I think that is really key to kind of say that if you don't have an understanding of DNS and how it works, and then I would definitely say don't go in and try and change it yourself. Like, it's like we were talking about websites before, weren't we? And how, like, it's almost like a piece of string with a website. Sometimes you'll think, oh, well, just change this one thing, and then
And then,
actually that's
yeah,
connected to like 50 other things, and then suddenly your website disappears, and then you realize you don't have backups and all of it. So my warning to everybody is, if you don't understand the DNS, then get some advice from somebody that does, and you can.
Here's the challenge, right? And I don't know how to fix this, so I'm up for suggestions from people. Obviously, most recruiters I'm speaking to have at some point had interaction with an IT company or an IT specialist or someone internally in IT who knows, who on the face of it knows what they're doing, but for normally 3 or 4 different reasons, mistakes have been made. One, manual error, right? And they've just made a change, and in first line help desk person has gone and updated a DNS record where they did it wrong, put the wrong character in, whatever it might be. Could be, and I've seen a lot of people working with tech companies, and the tech company said, yeah, we've set up DMARC for you, done that. Okay, well, can we have a look at the DMARC reports? And they're like, yeah, there's all the there's all the XML files. No, but you were setting up DMARC monitoring, weren't you? Well, why would we want to do that? It's like, so there's a level of understanding here. One of the other reasons you get is again, someone can sound like an expert. I know a company that went out of business last year, and they've been selling themselves as a DNS and email delivery expert for a long time. In the end, they just shut their business down because they made so many mistakes, and then they realized they were way out of their depth. And I had 3-4 of their customers come to me and go, can you help? And I was like, and I looked at it, and within 5 minutes I've gone, yeah, I can see what they did wrong. We've got access to DNS. Yeah. 10 minutes fixed. Right. That's you out of the woods.
Yeah.
Absolutely out of the woods. And I'm always, I'm always keen to educate as well. So 9 times out of 10, if the tech company or whoever is involved, the marketing company, when I'm helping a client, will get them involved as well. And I say to them, do you want to jump on the call with us? Do you want me to show you how we've done this, what we're doing? I want to understand it. And I've had some more business out of it. I've trained IT companies on how to do this stuff. I love doing it, right?
Yeah, and I do think it's good to have an understanding. So even if you're not the person necessarily punching the keys and things, I definitely say, like, from a marketer's perspective, I've just got a really critical mind anyway, so I always want to know how everything works. But it is really good to have an understanding, because much like the accounts, I understand what my accountant does. Do I want to necessarily do every single keystroke that he does? No, absolutely not. But so I'd definitely say.
Just a quick touch on the DMARC stuff. A lot of tech companies will implement DMARC from a security perspective, but they're not necessarily interrogating the data from a deliverability perspective. They're not looking at it through your lens. So if your tech company set up DMARC reporting for you, ask to go through it with them, or ask to get a login to it if you can, and actually try and understand the data and get towards for it. So what's that? Well, hold on, that might be us. I think that might be us there.
Yeah. And I am conscious of time. I feel like, Ben, we said this, didn't we, when we were talking about the webinar before, that we would struggle to keep it out. So I'm just going to move on slightly. In terms of metrics, and not necessarily, I know we talked about the DMARC reporting and things like that, and using things like that Google Postmaster, but in terms of like email marketing campaigns, what do you think are the metrics that people should be monitoring when they're sending these out?
So we know you've got to keep your bounce rate under 5%. That's the ceiling. If you're hitting 5% bounce rate, then panic. There's something wrong with your data, and you need to look at it. Most email marketing platforms will tell you off if you're hitting that anyway. Obviously, with Google, it's under 0.3% users reporting you as spam, and you can see that if you set up Google Postmaster. They've set that rule, so it's not about me advising. Obviously, 0% is great, but it's difficult to get there. Looking at like DMARC reporting, you should be hitting like 97 to 98% DMARC success rate. So success of SPF and DKIM, I should say, and DMARC reporting that it's all green. From a engagement perspective, it's fairly common in marketing that if you're getting 5% back, that's a good return. 8% is fantastic. Anything above 10, like golden chalice you found here, you've got a really, really engaging audience. But those data lists as well is you probably should be removing about half as many records as you're adding into your database. It's it's just a general statistic I've seen over the years of that's how much data is cycling out. People leave jobs, they move, companies go under, other things happen to people. Those email addresses just become deactivated.
Yeah. I think that, and I won't go into it now, but there was a talk that I saw, or one that I was part of a talk a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about data and how often you delete old data out of your database, and it was funny. It was in a room full of recruiters, and it became like a real. There was such varying kind of agreement, disagreement. I think it was Nick from 424, and he was saying, no, actually it was Adam. And he was saying, like, if you've not had any replies within 6 months, you should delete the data. And you could just see everyone's eyes in the room going, what? That's madness.
Well, if you deal with, and there are some different rules around the world on this. So if you're dealing in, say, selling into Germany, right? The German data regulations are if you've not had any activity with an individual for 2 years, you have to remove that record, and you have to demonstrate you have a process for doing that.
Yeah. And I'm going to make this the last one thing, but just as around optimal frequency for email marketing, based on kind of your experience and the people that you've worked with, is there kind of an optimal frequency of how many times you should be emailing these people? What have you seen in terms of best practice?
Individuals?
Yeah.
It's difficult, right? So if you're adding value and you're providing valuable content, they're not marking you a spam, emailing them every day. But
were you looking for a little gold star there from like speaking to the marketing team?
But yeah, if generally, if people are getting that, I mean, I've got emails I get from people every single day, little top tips in the morning, and that's cool, that's cool. No, I don't read them every day, but I value their content, so there's nothing wrong with that. But can you add value on a daily basis, weekly basis, fortnightly basis, monthly basis to your contacts? And it's about you deciding in what way can I add value to that individual, and that should dictate how often you email them. And if it's every time there's a job that's available and you know that candidate's looking, then that could be every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're kind of on time. I'm just going to pause there for a minute just to allow people to add anything else to the Q&A or the chat. And just to say, the next webinar that we'll be doing, which is on the 2nd of July, is going to be around changing the mindset of consultants around marketing. So it's 2nd of July. And then on the 16th of July, we're going to be talking about what marketeers can learn from sales training for rookies in the recruitment industry. So we've got someone coming on to talk about that. I'm at RDLC event this Thursday. If anyone's going, hope to see you there. It's Trevor Pinder is the speaker, so it should be quite a good one.
That's good.
Yeah, anybody, we'll just do a quick shameless plug. So obviously, if anybody wants to speak to me about marketing planning, mentoring of people within your organization, or like a fractional marketing director, I'll send around an email after with all my contact details as a link that you can book a free consultation with me. Then I will obviously share all of your details too within that same email. So I presume people can book a consultation. And I think actually you do a free audit, don't you? Is that right?
Yeah. So I've got a report I can run on your domain, gives you a general understanding of what's going on, gives you a ranking from 0 to 100. No one ever gets 100. So, don't panic anyone. So yeah, it's essentially, and you can get a free trial from my Quint. So if you go to quinset.co.uk, and you'll see the email delivery section, you can click on Power Mail. You can go and set up a 2-week free trial and play around with Quinset Power Mail from a DMARC reporting perspective. And essentially the report I run is based on that tool. People are really panicking because they've got major problems. By all means, just reach out, contact me on LinkedIn. Details have got shared. If it's outside of kind of email delivery and then my other hat, my kind of more strategic fractional CTO stuff, I'm also working with a company called Next Gen IT. So we look after all the other IT stuff in businesses as well. I just had a WhatsApp pop up on my phone. I wasn't watching, honest, from a friend of mine who said, don't forget to make someone ask the question, and they haven't, which is, how many emails should I send a day? Like, there's a volume number.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I say it's not necessarily about the number of emails you send. It's about the consistency of the volume. Having a nice graph over the week is always quite good, right? Building it up and don't send in thousands of spikes once a week, twice a week. You want a nice
Yeah.
flow of stuff. Good email marketing automation tools will dribble
I
this
was
stuff
about
out.
to say that, yeah.
Yeah.
Like a lot
Yeah.
of the tools that you see out there have that facility, don't they? So it can literally drip feed. So that rather than sending 2,000 at once, it goes out in smaller chunks, which is obviously going to help with the email deliverability as well. But the numbers shouldn't be huge, should they, Ben? Because they'll be so segmented.
Yeah, they'll be
The
relevant
numbers
to your
will be
audience
small,
base.
yeah.
But like, how many emails does Amazon send out? At the end of the day, Amazon has a bunch of platforms. It has a few domains, and it sends out hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of emails every single day. They hit your inbox.
They also do direct mail.
By me.
That's why, yeah, I love it. I love getting direct mail from Amazon. And Google use direct mail as well. I'm such a direct mail fan. So I'm like, look, if these people are doing it, it must tell you something.
Yeah.
Right. I've just checked in the Q&A and there isn't anything.
Well, we've nailed it then.
Oh, no. So, like, I'm taking that as a win that, we've covered everything, or that we've completely made people go, oh my God. So they're probably going to then go away and come up with a million questions. So if anybody does have any questions that they think of, like I said, I'll include Ben's details and mine in the email that goes round, which will probably be tomorrow now, which will have the recording in there too. And then you can feel free to reach out to either of us about what we've talked about today. So thank you so much, Ben, for coming on today.
Thank you, Ben.
Look, we're 2 minutes spare as well. I'm super proud that we managed to cram everything in that time. So we'll end there, and I'll just say thanks again.
Brilliant. Thanks all. Thanks all for joining us.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye.